Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Verlicity AI podcast. I'm Cristian Worthington.
And I'm Sandra Giffin.
Today, we're going to discuss what we're calling the age of alignment.
That's right. And I predict that by the end of this episode, you're going to feel a lot better about the future. Spoiler alert, like everything is in alignment.
Haha, yes. On this podcast, we've spent a lot of time exploring the real-world impact of artificial intelligence, how it's changing our jobs, our businesses, and our creativity. But there's one topic that always seems to loom in the background, a concept that often gets relegated to the world of science fiction. I'm talking about the alignment problem.
When you hear that term, your mind probably jumps to Hollywood blockbusters or classic thought experiments. Maybe visions of the Terminator come to mind.
Exactly. And while those are fascinating, long-term ideas to wrestle with, in our day-to-day work building a new company with AI, we've been encountering a much more immediate, practical, and frankly human alignment problem. We're finding that the most significant misalignment isn't between us and the machine. It's often within ourselves.
And that's the core idea we want to unpack today. The conventional alignment problem is defined as the divergence between an AI's actions and our human interests. But we want to pose a different question. What if, in many of the challenges we face, the problem isn't that the AI is misaligned with us, but that we humans are misaligned with the best possible outcome? What if our own biases, our habits, and our flawed processes are the real barriers to achieving our goals, and AI is actually the tool that can finally help us get out of our own way?
To explore that, we're going to start with a story from our own past, a real-world experience that has nothing to do with AI, but perfectly illustrates this human alignment problem and sets the stage for everything that follows.
This happened many years ago, long before the current AI boom. We were hiring a chief technology officer for our software company. This was a pivotal hire, the kind of decision that can make or break a startup, so we wanted to be incredibly thorough.
We narrowed our talent search down to 6 highly qualified finalists. We wanted to use a scientific approach in selecting our new hire, so we decided to hold a competition.
The challenge was a complex systems analysis problem. We gave each candidate the same problem statement, 30 minutes to review it in private, and then we recorded them as they presented their proposed architecture on a whiteboard. We thought this would give us a clear, objective way to see how they think and who the best problem solver was.
In a word, the result was chaos. We were left in a complete state of confusion. Instead of clarifying our decision, the competition made it harder. We were absolutely flabbergasted because all 6 top-tier candidates had come up with 6 completely different, mutually incompatible solutions. It was almost comical. If we hadn't known better, it looked like they had conspired to deliberately confuse us.
We spent days reviewing the recordings, trying to make sense of it. And then we had a lightning bolt moment. One of our management team members had the brilliant idea to compare each candidate's proposed solution to their resume. And suddenly, everything fell into place. Each applicant had solved our problem by using the exact same tools, frameworks, and architectural patterns they had used in their last job.
We had inadvertently hosted a come-as-you-are party. The contestants weren't aligning their solution with the task. They were aligning the task with their past experience. This is a perfect example of a well-documented cognitive bias known as the law of the instrument, or perhaps more famously, Maslow's hammer. It's named after the psychologist Abraham Maslow, who in 1966 wrote, "I suppose it is tempting, if the only tool you have is a hammer, to treat everything as if it were a nail."
And the law of the instrument is just one of many cognitive biases that subconsciously shape our professional judgment. For example, the CTO candidates were also likely falling prey to confirmation bias, which is our tendency to seek out and interpret information in a way that confirms our pre-existing beliefs. A candidate who was an expert in a specific database technology likely interpreted our problem in a way that made their preferred database the obvious solution.
It's also a form of expertise bias. where professionals are inclined to apply their specific hard-won expertise to every situation, even when it's not the most appropriate approach. The important thing to remember is that these biases aren't a sign of incompetence. They are subconscious mental shortcuts our brains use to navigate a complex world. But in this case, those shortcuts led 6 brilliant people to 6 very different and likely suboptimal conclusions. They were misaligned.
And this is where the conversation pivots back to AI. The very thing that made those CTOs experts, their deep, focused experience, also became a set of blinders, narrowing their field of vision and limiting their practical options. Their experience, rather than broadening their toolkit, had effectively shrunk it to a single, comfortable hammer. An AI, on the other hand, is unbound by this type of experiential bias.
Exactly. An AI has an encyclopedic knowledge of all techniques and software libraries and is, in theory, equally competent in every method. It doesn't have a favorite hammer because it has no ego, no comfort zone, and no career history invested in one particular technology stack. When you give the AI a problem, its alignment can be purely with the task itself, not with its own past. It can evaluate all options with a cold, inhuman rationality that we humans often struggle to achieve. This idea of human bias limiting our outcomes extends beyond just cognitive shortcuts. It deeply affects the economics of how we build things, especially in a field like software development. The cadence of a typical software project is measured in days, weeks, and months. As that time passes, you're pouring immense resources into a project, developer salaries, time, and effort. This creates a powerful psychological trap.
It's a trap that economists and psychologists call the sunk cost fallacy. This is our tendency to continue an endeavor simply because we've already invested resources in it, even if it's no longer the rational choice. It's the feeling behind the phrase, throwing good money after bad. Imagine you're 6 months into building a feature. You realize it's not right, but you think, we've already spent so much time on this. It would be wasteful to stop now.
In the software world, this fallacy is one of the primary drivers of what we call technical debt. It's why companies persist with outdated legacy systems long after they should have been replaced, arguing, we've already invested too much in the old system to switch now. This forces teams to live with suboptimal solutions, creating a permanent gap between what a product is and what it should be. It's a forced misalignment, driven by economics.
But the new paradigm of AI-driven development, or vibe coding as it's sometimes called, completely upends this economic equation. As we've experienced with tools like Replit, the development cadence is no longer measured in weeks. It's measured in minutes and hours. When an AI can generate the scaffolding for an entire application in the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee, the economic power of sunk costs evaporates.
The marginal cost of starting over is reduced to virtually zero. This is a profound shift. In the old model, abandoning a flawed project felt like a catastrophic failure. In this new model, a flawed prototype is just cheap data. You can throw it away without a second thought because creating a new, better version is trivial. This freedom from the sunk cost fallacy doesn't just make development faster, it makes it more rational. It allows decisions to be based on future value, not past investment, which is the very definition of being better aligned with a project's ultimate goals.
And this has a startling implication for the quality of the final product. In the past, human teams often had to settle for good enough because they were exhausted or they simply ran out of time and money. The sunk cost of their effort was too high to justify starting over to fix a fundamental flaw. But when the cost of iteration approaches zero, the pursuit of perfection is no longer a luxury. It becomes an achievable, practical goal.
This economic shift directly enables a higher degree of alignment with the ideal solution.
This shift towards a higher standard of quality has a fascinating historical parallel. In the 1970s and 80s, the American auto industry was in a crisis. Their model for quality control was something that happened at the very end of the assembly line. A car would roll off the line, someone would try to start it, and if it was defective, the entire finished vehicle would be sent to a massive repair facility. It was incredibly inefficient.
Then Japanese manufacturers introduced a revolutionary new philosophy. Drawing on the work of thinkers like W. Edwards Deming, they championed ideas like total quality management, TQM, and Kaizen, the principle of continuous improvement. The core idea was radical. You don't inspect for quality at the end. You build quality into every single step of the process.
A central tool of this philosophy is the PDCA cycle, which stands for Plan, Do, Check, Act. It's a simple but powerful scientific method for improvement. You plan a change, you do it on a small scale, you check the results to see if it worked, and then you act by either standardizing the improvement or adjusting the plan and repeating the cycle.
What's amazing is that the AI-driven development process we're using today with Replit is a perfect, high-velocity, digital implementation of that exact cycle. Plan, the human user writes a prompt defining the goal. Do, the AI generates the code or content. Check, the human and AI immediately tests the output. This is the critical step. Act, based on the test, the human refines the prompt and runs the cycle again.
This brings us to one of the most common criticisms of AI, that it produces buggy code or that it hallucinates and makes things up. From the old end-of-the-line perspective, any bug or hallucination is seen as a critical failure of the system. But if we view it through the lens of a rapid PDCA cycle, the meaning changes completely.
That's right. Some researchers now argue that we should treat AI hallucinations not as a bug, but as a feature of a probabilistic system. These models are designed to generate novel, creative outputs, not just retrieve stored facts. The ability to create something new is what also allows it to invent a fact. Within a Kaizen workflow, an occasional bug or hallucination is simply a deviation that gets caught instantly during the check phase. It's not a disaster. It's a data point that informs the act phase, making the next iteration better.
And this process is accelerating to an incredible degree. Take the latest version of the tool we're using, Replit's Agent 3. One of its new flagship features is the ability to autonomously test the applications it's building. It can spin up a real browser, click on buttons, fill out forms, and verify that the code it just wrote actually works. If it finds a bug, it then attempts to fix it on its own.
That's the check and act phases of the PDCA cycle becoming automated. It's a virtuous, self-correcting loop that is literally baking quality into the cake from the very start. This continuous evaluation process means the project's alignment with the goal often exceeds anything you could possibly create with human developers on a normal budget, because the quality control is happening constantly, not at the end of the line.
I like to think of it this way. Imagine you bake a cake, and after you're done, you realize you inadvertently mixed raisins into the batter. Conventional software quality control has us tearing the cake apart looking for the raisins. With an aggressive PDCA cycle enabled by an AI development tool like Replit, the raisins never make it into the final product.
So when we revisit the alignment problem, a new picture emerges. The immediate challenge isn't a rogue superintelligence, the Terminator scenario. It's the friction and bias inherent in our own human processes. We've seen how AI can act as a mirror, helping us overcome our cognitive biases like the law of the instrument, escape the economic traps like the sunk cost fallacy that force us to compromise, and adopt a superior iterative process for building quality from the ground up.
Exactly. But understanding these concepts is one thing. The real challenge, the one that truly matters for your career and your business, is learning to see them in yourself. It's one thing to nod along when you hear about bias in others. It's another thing entirely to spot it in your own reflection. So, for the next part of our conversation, we want to move from the conceptual to the deeply practical. We want to give you a set of tools to diagnose your own misalignments.
We're calling it the alignment audit. Because before you can use these powerful new AI tools to align with your goals, you first have to understand where you are currently misaligned. And most of us are running on what you might call invisible scripts, pre-written lines of code in our brains that dictate our professional behavior without our conscious consent. AI is the mirror that can finally make those scripts visible.
Let's start with the most powerful invisible script of all. Chris, you'll remember the story we told at the beginning of the episode, the parable of the 6 CTOs.
Of course, 6 brilliant, top-tier CTO candidates and 6 completely different, mutually incompatible solutions. Each candidate had a set of blinders. They weren't aligning their solution with the task. They were aligning the task with their past experience.
You need to ask yourself a very direct question. What is your hammer? What is the one tool, the one process, the one mental model you reach for to solve almost every problem you encounter at work?
This isn't just a question for software engineers. Every profession has its hammers. For a marketer, the hammer might be running another performance advertising campaign for every business challenge, from brand awareness to user retention. For a manager, the hammer might be applying more pressure and setting tighter deadlines as the only tool for motivation. For a writer, it could be forcing every topic into the same familiar article structure, regardless of the subject matter.
For an entrepreneur, the hammer might be the belief that every problem, from product market fit to team morale, is a nail that can be fixed with another round of venture capital. These aren't just tools. They're comfort zones. They are security blankets. They are the well-worn neural pathways that our brains prefer because they are efficient and predictable. But they are also the primary source of our professional misalignment.
And what makes this so difficult to spot is that the hammer isn't just a tool. It's often an identity. The CTO candidates in our story didn't just use their preferred technology stack. Their entire professional identity, their expertise, their value in the marketplace was built on being an expert in that specific stack. To suggest a different tool wasn't just a technical disagreement, it was a subtle challenge to their very sense of self-worth. This is why the bias is so incredibly powerful and so hard to self-diagnose. True alignment requires a degree of ego detachment. You're not just being asked to change a tool, you're being asked to decouple your identity from your methods.
So here's a concrete action you can take right now. Pause and think about a recent professional challenge you faced. Write it down. Now, be brutally honest with yourself. What was the very first solution that sprang to your mind? The one you instinctively reached for? Ask yourself, was that solution truly aligned with the unique contours of the problem? Or was it aligned with your comfort zone? Was it the best tool for the job? Or was it just your favorite hammer?
The second invisible script that governs our work is an economic one, but its effects are deeply emotional. We talked earlier about the sunk cost fallacy, our tendency to keep investing in something simply because we've already poured resources into it. It's that little voice in your head that says, we've already spent so much time on this. It would be wasteful to stop now.
This script doesn't just lead to bad business decisions. It can trap us in suboptimal lives. So, the second part of your alignment audit is to conduct a sunk cost inventory. Take a moment to scan your professional life for these traps. Are you working on a project that no longer excites you or that you know is fundamentally flawed, but you continue because of the months or years of effort you've already invested?
Are you continuing down a specific career path, not because it represents the future you truly want, but because of the decade of experience you've already accumulated or the expensive degree you earned? In our companies, this is the force that keeps us shackled to legacy systems and outdated processes. It's the argument that we've invested too much in the old system to switch now, which creates a permanent, forced misalignment between what our product is and what it should be.
This isn't just an individual bias. It becomes encoded in an organization's DNA. It manifests as technical debt, but it's also procedural debt, strategic debt, and cultural debt. It's like organizational scar tissue. It's the accumulation of past decisions that makes the company rigid, inflexible, and slow to adapt. It's the weight of its own history.
And this is where the new paradigm of AI-driven development becomes so revolutionary. When an AI can generate a new application or a new strategy in minutes, the marginal cost of starting over is reduced to virtually zero. This isn't just an economic benefit, it's a cultural one. It's a solvent for that organizational scar tissue. It gives companies permission to escape the gravity of their own past investments and to act like a startup again, nimble, fast, and free from the weight of legacy decisions. It is a tool for organizational renewal.
So you've identified your hammer and you've inventoried your sunk costs. The final step of the audit is to use AI as a tool to break free from them. The power of a large language model is that it has, as we said, no ego, no comfort zone, and no career history invested in one particular way of doing things. It is the ultimate unbiased sparring partner.
Exactly. You can use it to systematically challenge your own assumptions, and you can engage in this process privately with the AI, so you don't need to be worried that your candor will lead to professional embarrassment. The key is in how you frame the question with the AI. We've been experimenting with a prompting technique we call the unbiased question. It's a prompt that explicitly instructs the AI to ignore all past context, all historical data, all of the baggage that leads to our human biases. You want to invite the counterfactual scenario where your assumptions are wrong.
Let's make this concrete for our listeners.
For example, let's say your challenge is to increase user engagement on your app. Your hammer is to run another paid social media ad campaign. Your sunk costs are the $50,000 you've already spent on that channel and the fact that your professional reputation is tied to its success. Your unbiased question to an AI could be, assume our current ad strategy is completely wrong. Propose 10 radically different, low-cost user engagement strategies, ignoring all our past efforts and data.
Or imagine your task is to draft the quarterly board report. Your hammer is to use the same slide deck template as last quarter. The sunk cost is the weeks it took you to perfect that template. Starting over feels inefficient. Your unbiased question could be, analyze the following key results. Design a new, more impactful narrative and visual structure for a board presentation that prioritizes strategic insight over historical consistency. The goal here is to use the AI's inhuman rationality to break your own cognitive loops and force you to see the problem with fresh eyes.
So you've completed your alignment audit, you've identified your hammers, and inventoried your sunk costs. The next step is to adopt a new way of working, a process designed from the ground up for this new age. It's a workflow that embeds the principles of alignment and quality from the very start. We call it the alignment workflow.
And this isn't just a futuristic theory, it's a modern implementation of a philosophy that has a proven track record. We mentioned earlier the quality revolution in the Japanese auto industry in the 70s and 80s. They shifted from inspecting for defects at the end of the assembly line to a philosophy of Kaizen, or continuous improvement, building quality into every single step of the process. Their core tool was a simple but powerful scientific method called the PDCA cycle: plan, do, check, act.
What's so incredible is that the AI-driven development process we're all using today is a perfect, high-velocity digital version of that exact cycle. AI allows us to run this loop not over the course of weeks or months, but in minutes or even seconds. Mastering this new cadence is the key to producing perfectly aligned work. It's a high-velocity PDCA cycle in practice.
Let's break down what this looks like in practice, because it requires a fundamental mindset shift about how we interact with these tools.
It starts with the plan phase. In the alignment workflow, your prompt is not an order. It's a scientific hypothesis. You aren't just telling the AI, write me a marketing slogan. You are hypothesizing, a slogan that emphasizes ease of use and time saving, will resonate with our target audience. This reframes the act of prompting from a simple instruction into a strategic act of inquiry. You are defining the parameters of an experiment.
The do phase is the AI's generation of the output. This is the execution of your experiment. And because the marginal cost of this execution is virtually zero, you can run hundreds of these experiments before you've finished your morning coffee. The AI's output isn't the final product. It's just cheap data from your first test run.
Next comes the check phase, and this is the most critical step. This is where the human role is not just preserved, it is elevated and becomes more important than ever. The AI generates the options. You, the human, discern the quality. This is the moment where you exercise your taste, your strategic vision, your deep domain expertise, and your understanding of the customer. The AI can generate an infinite number of musical notes, but you are the conductor who must decide if they form a symphony. This is where you are promoted from a practitioner to a director with impeccable taste.
And that brings us to the act phase. Based on your check, you refine your hypothesis and run the cycle again. But we should think about this phase in a new way. It's not just about fixing bugs or correcting the AI's hallucinations. A better metaphor is vectoring. Imagine your goal. A product perfectly aligned with your customer's needs is a single point in a vast space. Your initial prompt is your first vector, pointing the AI in the general direction. The AI's output lands somewhere nearby. Your next prompt, the act phase, is a course correction, refining the vector to steer the AI's probabilistic output closer and closer to that ideal point of perfect alignment.
This reframing also changes how we should think about AI's supposed flaws, like hallucinations. We should treat AI hallucinations not as a bug, but as a feature. If you view the AI as a simple database, then a made-up fact is a critical error. But if you view it as a creative partner in a high-velocity PDCA cycle, a hallucination is simply an unexpected deviation, a surprising result from one of your experiments.
Most of the time, these deviations are just noise, and they get filtered out instantly in the check phase. But every now and then, that unexpected connection, that invented fact or bizarre line of code, is the source of a breakthrough innovation. It's a creative leap that a purely logical, deterministic system could never make. This workflow encourages us to embrace the serendipity of these probabilistic systems as a source of novelty, not just a source of answers.
Adopting these new workflows individually is powerful. It will change the quality and speed of your personal output. But the real, durable, competitive advantage in the age of alignment will come from building an entire culture of alignment. This requires a new kind of leadership.
And this brings us back to the promise we made at the start. This new age won't make humans obsolete. On the contrary, it will promote humans. So how does this look in practice for leaders, for managers, and for anyone who guides the work of others?
For decades, the value of many professional roles was tied to the act of production. You were valued for your ability to write the code, draft the legal document, or design the graphic. The human was the practitioner, the person in the ditch digging. AI is now automating large swaths of that production. The promotion, then, is a shift from practitioner to architect. The architect's job isn't to dig the ditch. It's to decide where the city goes.
The architect of vision doesn't write the 10,000 lines of code. They write the one-page brief that perfectly defines the why. They are obsessed with the problem, not the solution. They set the unwavering standard for what perfectly aligned with the customer's needs actually means. Their output isn't code. It's clarity.
And if the architect sets the vision, the director executes it with taste. In a world of infinite, AI-generated options, taste becomes the ultimate editor and the scarcest resource. The director is the one who curates the AI's torrential output. They are the one who says no to 99 good ideas to find the one great one. They ensure the final product, whether it's an app, an ad campaign, or a film, is coherent, elegant, and emotionally resonant.
What we're describing is a fundamental bifurcation of labor between human intent and machine execution. The most valuable human work is shifting away from the how and toward the why and the what. Future jobs and career paths will be measured less by technical proficiency, the ability to do the task, and more by strategic and aesthetic clarity, the ability to define the task perfectly. This has massive implications for how we hire, train, and manage people. We will need to start hiring for judgment, for vision, and for taste. Qualities that are much harder to quantify than lines of code written or tickets closed.
So if your new role is architect and director, what does that make you as a leader of a team? We believe the best metaphor for leadership in the age of alignment is that of a gardener. Your job is no longer to manage the minute-to-minute tasks of your people. It's to cultivate the environment where a culture of obsessive alignment can grow and thrive.
And a gardener has 3 primary responsibilities. First, you must enrich the soil, which means creating deep psychological safety. Think about the high-velocity PDCA cycle. It only works if the check phase is safe. If a team member is afraid to show you a flawed or hallucinated AI prototype because they fear being judged for its imperfections, they will stop experimenting. They will slow down. You will lose all the benefits of high-velocity iteration. As a leader, you must champion the idea that a flawed prototype isn't a failure to be punished. It's cheap data to be celebrated and learned from.
Second, the gardener must provide sunlight, which means providing absolute clarity of vision. You, as the leader, must be the chief architect for your entire team. Your vision for the product, the customer, and the definition of quality must be so clear and so compelling that it acts like sunlight, guiding everyone's independent efforts in the same direction. In a world where individuals are empowered to run hundreds of experiments a day with AI, ambiguity is the deadliest poison. It is the enemy of alignment.
And finally, and perhaps most importantly, the gardener must prune aggressively. This means relentlessly upholding the quality bar. As AI makes the quantity of creative work effectively infinite and free, the only meaningful differentiator left is quality. Your most valuable contribution as a leader will be your willingness to say, "This is good, but it's not perfectly aligned with our vision. It's not good enough. Let's run the cycle again." You are the last line of defense protecting your team and your customers from the temptation to ship the lousy, misaligned products the market will no longer tolerate.
So there you have it. We've journeyed from the grand abstract challenge of AI alignment all the way down to a personal audit of your own invisible scripts. From there, we gave you a new practical workflow for creation, and finally, a new model for leadership in this emerging era.
The age of alignment is here. The convergence of AI's new capabilities and the market's rising expectations has raised the bar for everyone. But we want you to see this not as a burden, but as an invitation. It is an invitation to do the most meaningful, most creative, and most human work of your lives. The human role is no longer about rote labor, but about vision, taste, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. And as we said at the start, since true perfection is unattainable, an infinite workload lies ahead of us. Your real work is just beginning.
Start your alignment audit today. Question your hammer, inventory your sunk costs, and begin the journey of becoming the architect of your own work. The game has changed. The front line of competition for the coming decade will be a relentless obsession with quality and alignment.
We'd love to hear your thoughts. You can find us on X at Verlicity AI, on YouTube, and all the popular podcast apps. And if you liked this episode, please share it with a friend. It's a conversation we all need to be having.
Until next time, I'm Cristian Worthington.
And I'm Sandra Giffin. Stay curious, and if you want to be aligned with Verlicity AI, don't forget to subscribe.